All right, good morning. Let's bow our heads and let's pray. Gracious Father, thank you for the opportunity we have to be here this morning. I want to pray, Lord, that you may be with us, and now that you may remove the distractions and all the weight that we have in our mind and our shoulders and our hearts, and let us, in this moment, just focus on the message you have for us. I thank you, Lord, for bringing us here, and I pray for those that can't be here today. Bless them as well with your presence. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. There's not that many of us today, so we're probably going to do something a little different today. And we're going to talk a little. Open your Bibles. Let's go to the Bible. I have no PowerPoint, so just ignore the screen. So let's get into the Bible. Open our Bibles in the book of Joshua. Chapter 1. We're going to study a little bit the first 9 verses. But I want us to talk. I want us to communicate a little bit. So if you have any ideas, any thoughts, if they're non-controversial, and if Joel and I agree with you, then you're welcome to share. Okay? If Joel doesn't agree, that's fine. You can still share them. Okay? So it's all good. But let's talk a little bit. So I hope you have your Bibles open in Joshua chapter 1. Let's read and then just see where this text takes us. So I'm going to start reading on verses 1. So after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' assistant. Yes. Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, you and all these people, into the land that I am giving to them, to the people of Israel. Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given to you, just as I promised to Moses. From the wilderness of this Lebanon, as far as the great river, the Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites, to the great sea toward the going down of the sun, shall be your territory. No man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. Just as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you or forsake you. Be strong and courageous, for you shall cause these people to inherit the land that I swore to their fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous, being careful to do according to all the law that Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may have good success wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. And then the verse that we read, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened, and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. We've read these before. We know these quite well. We understand the story. We heard the story. So as we are going again into these texts, what thoughts come to your mind? What jumps out of these texts into your eyes, into your mind? What reactions do you have? Let's talk a little bit. Do we need to read it again, or you want a little moment just kind of to go over the text again? What is the Bible telling you as you're reading the text? What are you grasping as you're reading the text?
It must have been an incredible thing for Joshua to be one of the only surviving people of the original group that came out of Egypt.
How many survived?
Anyone under 12, I would think.
That for the main generation died, except
for Caleb
two.
And Joshua.
Caleb and Joshua. Okay? Go ahead. It must have been an
So
incredible...
it must have been an incredible realization that he is one of the two that are allowed to go into the promised land, and he's actually going to lead the people. Probably from Joshua's character that I read, he probably didn't feel worthy to do that.
It's kind of a deja vu, right? Lord, here we are again, about to cross the river. 40 years ago, here we were again, about to cross the river. Is it really going to be now? Are we going to cross it now? Must be quite something, I agree with that. What else? What other thoughts come to your mind?
I think for me, the continuation of saying, be strong and courageous, the fear,
Why would the Lord say that?
I'm putting more emphasis on the frequency that he's saying it, so that might indicate that there is such a apprehension, tension.
Why?
Will they be able to go through? Will he fulfill what he said he would do?
Okay, I mean, let's develop that part a little bit more, because I also was thinking about that a little bit. 40 years before, they were in that same place. And what happened 40 years before? They doubted. The 12 spies came back, and what was their report? It is a good land, but...
We're grasshoppers.
The what?
We're grasshoppers.
We're grasshoppers. There's giants there. So now Joshua is back, and I mean, the giants are not gone. Joshua's back, Caleb is back. I'm sure the 40-year event that took place, a long time ago, now is back in his mind. And now Moses is also gone, so he's probably wondering, what's going to happen? That sense of inadequacy, probably, doubt, could be. Why else would the Lord insist? 3 times he mentions that. Be strong and courageous. What?
He's also saying, be careful, because there's going to be strong laws, so, like, they messed up before, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's saying, I'm with you.
Yep.
Don't fear, but remember, don't forget.
It's very easy, and I've been there, I'm there, and I will be there, for a leader to see things differently than God. It's very easy for someone that is leading suddenly feel like this is the way we need to go. And maybe the Lord is saying, no, you got to go this way, but this way makes sense. So God is kind of telling you, Joshua, over and over, be strong, be courageous, remember, what happened before, remember where you're coming from, and remember who's leading you. Stick to me, and you'll get there. Because if you deviate from the law, if you deviate from that relationship with me, because ultimately that's the purpose of the law, if you deviate from that, guess what's going to happen to you? You will not go the right way, right? I'm develop a little more on what you're saying. What else? Yes, Church.
Yes, I just looked in
He's special. He has a
message. Verse 7. It says, "Give it everything you have, heart and soul." It goes on to say, don't get off track, so as to make sure you get where you're going. That sort of reminds me of Revelation says about the Laodicean church, neither hot nor cold. And the children of Israel, remember, they told Moses, "Oh, we will do everything that God asks us to do." But here he's asking them to give heart and soul.
Mm-hmm. Yep, give it all. What else? What other thoughts come to your mind as you read this text?
He identifies people, the Hittite.
Mm-hmm.
So they are not going to go unopposed.
Okay, pause there. Right? Interesting thing that I learned this week about the Hittites. Right? When the Septuagint Bible was written, which basically the Septuagint, for those that do not know, is the translation of the Old Testament into Greek. And they call it the Septuagint because it was translated by 70 translators. Okay? When it was translated to Greek, they removed the reference to the Hittites. And they removed because there was no evidence that could support that. And so, critics, biblical critics, start using that, discrediting the Bible, to say the Bible is not true it says this, and yet it talks about the Hittites. And by the 19th century, basically, the Bible was the only book that mentioned the Hittites. There was no evidence of even the empire of the Hittites' existence. So critics were saying that this is wrong. There is no evidence. God, in his funny, heuristic way, one day led a woman to find a huge city of the Hittites, and that had a name somewhere. And of course, that destroyed their arguments and confirmed again the biblical accounts. Up to the 19th century, they were using that to discredit the Bible. And suddenly, one day, oh, I guess the Hittites existed. And at the time, the Hittites were a big empire. They were just similar in their influence to the Egyptians. So they were quite something. But suddenly, no more reference. Everything was wiped out, erased from the world's history until 19th century. Interesting. How sometimes we try to prove or not prove, and people try to discredit the Bible, saying this didn't exist, but on his own time, things will show up. And God uses his humor. I call it humor. Because it's when really the debate is high up there, suddenly someone finds something. So, but go ahead. I just want to add that a little.
Well, Joshua is not foreign to this group of people. Like, I mean, Moses actually as the leader, and that's being trained in Pharaoh's army. Moses actually fought against the Hittites as a young man. So these guys know this is a formidable opponent.
Yep.
And that's not just the one that's mentioned. There's several. So Joshua knows as a military man, whoa, we are going to need help.
Yeah. Interesting. One more comment? Anyone else? Jim, are you awake? Yes? Good. How are you today? Awesome. No more comments? All right, let's continue then. One thing that I want to mention, when we think about Moses, how many books did Moses wrote? 5, right? Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, right? Now look at this. If you go back a couple pages, or probably just one page, on your Bible, on chapter 34, the book of Deuteronomy, talks about something very specific. What does it talk about? The death of Moses. But Moses wrote Deuteronomy. Yes. But, as we understand, Moses did not write the last chapter. Because it talks about his death. Right? It makes sense. Someone else wrote the last chapter. Now, the beginning of the book of Joshua, write the first word. Some of the versions says, what? First word. What? After. There's another word. Another version. It has the word now, right? It has the word now. Which implies, or leads us to think that it's just a sequence of what was written before. So just for your own curiosity, if you don't care about that, that's fine, my own curiosity. We believe that the last chapter in the book of Joshua, and the book of Deuteronomy, was written by none other than Joshua himself. Okay? So, and it's just a sequence, okay? This is what happened, and this is how Moses died. And now, after the death of Moses, you see the sequence? After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, God said to Joshua, the son of Nun. And now introduces or shifts a little bit. Another thing that I found interesting was Joshua mentioning Moses not as the leader, but mentioning Moses as what? The servant. Isn't that interesting? He could have said, now after the death of Moses, leader of 2 million people or 3 million people, now after the death of Moses, the prince of Egypt that led a whole nation out of Egypt, no. The mention to Moses is in a humbling way. Now, after the death of Moses, servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' assistant, now Moses, my servant, is dead. Okay? Joshua, get over it. Moses is dead. It's been 30 days, and the Deuteronomy ends by saying that they mourn for 30 days. Now, we understand this as being at the end of the 30 days. It's been 30 days, Moses is dead, he's buried, now it's a new beginning. Let's start fresh. Start again. This is what you need to do. Now, therefore, arise and go over this Jordan. Don't send spies there. You don't need to send spies. You've seen it. You know what's out there. You still grasshoppers compared to the giants there, but there's still good honey, there's good grapes, there's good milk. Now it's time for you all to stand up and move forward. Moses is dead, just forget it. Move forward. Now, and so go over this Jordan, you and all the people, into the land that I am giving to them, to the people of Israel. And then the text says in verse 3, every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given to you. Isn't that interesting that the way he uses the verses, or the verbs? Every place that you step on, which implies that wherever they go, I have, not I will. I have already. It's already destined. It's been destined to give to you for the last 400 years. Right? You were supposed to take possession of this a long time ago. But every place where your foot steps on, I have already given to you, just as I promised Moses. So then it goes on and describes the distance of the land, talks about the land of the Hittites, and then no man shall be able to stand before you. Isn't it interesting that the same way that that God is promising to Joshua, he's telling him, no man is able to stand before you. That still applies to us today? Joshua is going to walk into a new country, and he was going to have battles, he was going to have to defeat enemies. They're going to take possession of a country whose people did not want them there. We have our own challenges. They may be different. They may be similar, they may be bigger, they may be smaller. We have our own challenges, but the same promise applies today. If we do not deviate from God's precepts, if we do not deviate from that relationship, no man will be able to stand in our way.
They still don't want them there.
They still want them there, right? But
They're there.
the promise is there.
They try to move.
Yeah. So stand before you all the days of your life. And just as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you or forsake you. So be strong and courageous. And now he starts that section where be strong and courageous, be strong and courageous, be strong and courageous. Do not deviate. Just keep the law. Keep my precepts. Have a relationship with me. Remain strong and courageous. And you will prosper. I'm looking for the word in English. You want the solution on how to prosper? Be strong and courageous. Do not deviate from the law. We'll get to that a little bit later. I'm doing cheap theology right now, so maybe we should remove these from the camera. But a couple of things I would like to mention to you. First, is in the person of Joshua. Again, Moses died. For the last 40 years, Moses was their leader. Whatever problems they had, they would come to Moses. They would bring to him. To the point that he got exhausted, so he had to kind of share the load a little bit. But he was their leader. I mean, this is a younger generation that is seeing Moses like their grandfather. Because all the other grandfathers have died. So Moses was the older one. And the kids are happy to see Moses, and now Moses died. And Joshua, who was Moses' assistant, probably is looking around and saying, okay, now what? What's going to happen? We can't really go back to Egypt. Are we supposed to go forward? And if so, who's going to lead? Who's going to be in charge? God tells Joshua, you are the one to be in charge. And now think about how Joshua must have felt. As he's struggling to see the future, as he looks back to the past and to the present, what thoughts must have come to his mind? And I want to say that one of his greatest thoughts, you touched that a little bit, was his sense of inadequacy. I'm not capable of doing this. I don't think I can do this. Let's think a little bit about this. And I wrote down here some notes to help me keep this in mind. Moses, he had been a prince in Egypt. So he was a nobody, or he was not like Joshua, nobody. Moses had been a prince in Egypt. Moses led a rebellion against one of the most powerful nations without even having an army. Moses carried a staff. He threw the staff on the ground, and the staff turned into what? A snake. Moses, when they were trapped by the Egyptian army in the back and the Red Sea in the front, what did he do? He lifted his staff, and the waters parted. And I can picture Joshua thinking about this, and like, okay, he did all this. Not sure if I can do this. Moses asked God for food, and every day for the last 40 years, there was food on the ground. People complained about meat. We want some meat. Thousands of birds flying to the camp. Moses' request. They complained about lack of water. They ran out of water. Moses grabbed his staff, hits the rock, and now there's flowing water there. He was able to talk to God almost face to face, to the point that his face was so bright that you could not look at him. He spoke some words, and a small earthquake destroyed his enemies. He used an army made up of slaves to defeat some of the most fierce nations in the area. He led the people of Israel for 40 years. And I would say that he got reviews of excellence as a leader year after year. He led the people right to the promised land that God had promised to them. He died when he was 120 years. Now the text tells us that his eyesight was as good as ever. Nothing had changed. And his body was healthy as any young man. His funeral lasted for 30 days. And the words in his tombstone, you can read in Deuteronomy 30, verse 12, says, "For no one has ever shown the mighty power or performed the awesome deeds that Moses did inside of what we do." Now place yourselves in Joshua's shoes. Okay. Now I'm supposed to take over after Moses did all of this? How would you feel? So when God is saying, be strong and be courageous, he's probably trying to clear up the doubts in his mind. He's trying to say, Joshua, I know that you're feeling inadequate, but this is not about you. This is not about you bringing the people to Israel, to Canaan, to the promised land. This is about the promise I made a long time ago and how I'm going to fulfill this promise. This is not even about Moses. Moses served when I needed him. But now I need someone different than Moses. Now I need you. So God is trying to reinforce in Joshua the belief that now he needs to forget. Thus the text saying right at the beginning, Moses is dead. Get over it. And now you are turning the page and you're going to lead the children of Israel. I don't know if I would like to be Joshua back there, but apparently he took upon this challenge and he led the children of Israel to there. So as I look at these texts, now from a different perspective, okay, we've seen from a Joshua perspective and maybe the need that God is telling him to be strong and courageous because of his sense of inadequacy. But how do we see God in this text? Okay? How do we pull some characteristics from God in this text? One of the characteristics that I think is quite interesting is that God is faithful to his promises. God is faithful in his promise. That never changes. Can someone read Genesis 17:8? Genesis chapter 17, verses 8. Can I have someone read that text? Genesis chapter 17, verses 8.
And I will give to you and to your descendants after you the land of your sojournings, all the land of Canaan for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God.
Thank you. This is a promise that God made. And he was very specific on the land. I will give it to you, the land of Canaan. This promise was made how long in the past? Over 400 years in the past. I will give you this land. And I'm sure throughout those years, at some point, they must have wondered, well, is God still really going to accomplish his promise? I mean, now we're living well in Egypt. Why do we want to go to Canaan? We're living the best land, the land of Goshen in Egypt. Joseph is our prime minister, so he's taking good care of us. Why would we want to go to Canaan? Oh, but God made this promise. Well, maybe God was kind of a little wrong, and maybe he wanted us to come here. A few years later, oh God, come on. When are you going to fulfill your promise? 100 years later, it's like, God, this is getting a little too much. 200 years later, 300 years later, and generations are changing and are dying, and God's promise is not being fulfilled. They get closer to the Jordan River. He's right there. The promised land. I told you I was bringing you out of Egypt, and I told you I was going to lead you to the promised land. He's right there. And suddenly, well, let's go back into the desert for another 40 years. God, when are you going to fulfill your promise? 40 years later, they're right there again. And this time God's saying, you know what? This is the time. I am going to fulfill my promise. It's going to be right now. And it's going to start right here in this spot. 400 years it took them. 400 years before, God made a promise. But God is faithful to his promises. Many times we open the Bible looking for a promise, for something to cheer us up, for something to help us go to the next day, for something to help us carry the burden of our challenges, of our problems. And we read the promises, and sometimes it's just seem empty promises because we don't see things happening. We want something to change. We want something to happen right there. Well, it's not about us. It's not about us. It's about when God wants to fulfill his promise. The promises are there. The Bible is very specific, especially in this event. It shows us that God will fulfill whatever he promised. So it's not about us. It's about his timing. It's about when he decides to fulfill his promise. Our job is to be sure, certain, that he will fulfill his promise. Second characteristic that I find about God in this text is that he is faithful in his presence. God is faithful in his promise, but he is also faithful in his presence. Can someone read Job chapter 14? Job chapter 14. You may want to listen to this. Job chapter 14, verses 1. Job chapter 14, verses 1.
Man who is born of a woman is a few days and full of trouble.
Okay, so what is the text telling us? The man who is born of a woman, just in a few days, and he's already full of what? Trouble. It's a given. Job acknowledged that. Okay? Or maybe. Job acknowledged that. We all will have problems. We all will have challenges. Life is not easy. But God told Joshua, be strong, be courageous. Wherever you walk, I will be right there. You are not going to walk alone. Wherever you go, I will be there with you. Wherever you step, I will be there with you. Interesting, he uses on verses 5, let me find it here. He says, no man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life, just as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. And then he says, I will not leave you, and then reinforces, or what? Forsake you. I will not leave you or forsake you. Now, here's the interesting thing. The idea of leave, or other versions have the word fail. The common, or the main word, the original word is rapha. Okay? This is the Hebrew word. And the translation, the literary translations means to be feeble, slack, to relax, or to abandon. So God is telling Joshua, I will not slack, I will not relax, I will not abandon you. I will keep my eyes on you. I will be with you. Wherever you go, I will go. And then the other word, forsake, the original word in Hebrew reads azab, and the word means to leave, to lose, forsake, or neglect. Now, at home, almost on a single day, on a daily basis, we experienced something interesting in my house. And it's the fact that at home there's always someone asking, have you seen my car keys? Have you seen my purse? I can't find my car keys. Have you experienced that, ladies? Mostly ladies that go through that, right? On a daily basis we experience that. We lose something. But God is telling Joshua, hey, I can multitask. And even though I'm busy with other things, I will still not lose you. I will not forsake you. My eyes will be on you. I will always be with you. To promise, or to faithfulness from God. He's faithful in His promise. He's faithful in His presence. And then the third one is God is faithful in His precepts and His commands. Now let's think a little bit about these. What is the law? I've got to hurry a little bit, but what is the law? What does the law represent ultimately? The what? Character of God, expressed through His love for each one of us, right? Which love probably be the major characteristic. God is love. The law represents that, right? So, it says, do not deviate from the law, because by studying the law, by connecting to the law, by learning about the law, you are what? Connecting to me. Now, we talked a little bit about this morning during our Sabbath school lesson. But we are, as human beings, we like to see our materialistic rewards happen right there and then. We want to get the things right there. And Joshua is thinking, okay, I will do this, I will keep the law, and this is the land you're going to give me. Yes, it's true. That's what the Bible says. But God, as you read kind of in between the lines, God has a bigger plan. As you connect to the law, as you keep the law, as you relate to me, you will prosper, not just material stuff, but also for eternity. Joshua, I want you not just to be their leader, I also want you in heaven. And so when we think about His promise that if you remain faithful to the law, you will prosper, God is saying, as much as you connect with me, you will be with me in heaven. God is faithful in His promises. God is faithful in His presence. No matter the challenges, God is faithful in His law, in His precepts. Was Joshua ready for the challenge? Maybe not. But God had a bigger challenge for him. Big challenge. And He assured you 3 times. He's trying to encourage, I will be with you. I promise, I can give you. As a matter of fact, I already did. Just stay faithful, follow the law, keep your connection to me, and everything that you see, and even beyond what you can't see, it will be given to you. And this God hasn't changed.
It's interesting, Pastor, that I just was thinking that, yet as connected as that is to each other, those 3 items that you just showed, the first ones are not connected to the last one. God is not going to leave nor forsake if you don't keep the law. That's about being prosperous. That's about being successful materially. If I'm taking from that, if Joshua should deviate from the law or step to the right hand or to the left when he shouldn't have, God is still not going to leave him or forsake him.
Yep.
So it was an interesting disconnect from the connection.
But I think also he was looking for unification, because if the law is showing God's character, and God's character is love, and true love is selfless, other-centered love. And that is what He's desiring to put in His people. You know, the trouble will come when the selfishness comes, and we break the law. Because when you think about the law and breaking the law, it's selfishness.
But that's exactly the difference, is that Joshua, if he breaks the law, steps away from God. God does not step away from him.
No,
Yep.
no. But he's not able to fulfill what he would like to fulfill through him.
God doesn't change.
Right.
And the same God that was there with Joshua and talked to Joshua is the same God we have today. It depends on our choice. You know, like you're saying, Joshua, if he steps away, that was Joshua's choice, not God's choice. Same thing happens to us. God does not change. So the same God that made these promises, the same God that was present with him, is the same God that is present with us today. He's the same God that will fulfill his promise today. He's the same God that wants to have that deep communion, deep connection with us, that we can get through the study of his word, that we can get through coming to the church, that we can get as we fellowship with each other, that we can get as we relate to him. A lot more can be said of these texts. Yeah.
So God never changes. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. He keeps his promise. Yet, when you look at the children of Israel, how his promise was not fulfilled, probably not fulfilled when he would have intended for it to be fulfilled, based on their faith and their relationship with him. So God fulfills his promise, but sometimes, is it reasonable to conclude that sometimes we delay the fulfillment of his promise?
Maybe we have to learn something.
Oh, this is getting hot now. Yeah, good, go ahead. You were saying
That's all
something.
I'm saying. Oh, I'm sorry, you didn't hear me.
No.
And maybe he teaches us something which we still have to learn. That's why he delays it.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
I think it's very safe to say it, and I agree with that. I mean, Ellen White was expecting God to come a long time ago, and we're still here. And I think he's just giving us an extra day to get us ready, and an extra day to preach the gospel. There's someone that he still wants to have it in heaven. And so he's postponing. It's not the time yet. He will come. The promise is going to be fulfilled. Whether we like it or not, whether we're ready or not, the promise will be fulfilled. But in his amazing love, he's delaying the fulfillment of his promise sometimes so we can be ready to receive
And I
him.
think for himself to be revealed. Because even in that time, they didn't recognize who he was. They had the law, they had the books, and Jesus was there, they didn't know him.
Yep.
And so here they go up to the Canaan, and they refuse to go in. They don't trust that God would be there. They feel like grasshoppers. And so then he's saying, don't deviate from me, know me, see me, I am there, I am faithful. It's not about what you do, it's what I will get you through, but you have to. Let's say they weren't faithful. Could he give them the land? Could he, they don't trust him to defeat, could they? If they were like Caleb in the Bible, who says, give me the hardest, region to conquer, I'll take him down,
Unfortunately, as human beings, and I'm probably one of the greatest examples of that, I want answers right away. My wife knows that. I struggle with impatience. I want things to happen right in the moment. So when I pray and ask God for something, I expect it to happen right there. But God knows that I have a process to go. I have a growing to do. And he knows when I'm ready for that. And so sometimes as the years go by and I look back and I'm like, okay, I see now why he took this long. One of the biggest questions was that I've had, I graduated with theology, and it took me about 7 years to be able to start working as a pastor. And it seemed like there was no interest from conference and all that. Now I look back and I say, you know what, those 7 years were good because he helped me mature more than I was. I'm still one ways to mature, but he helped me grow. And so maybe if I had been a pastor back then, I don't know. I don't even want to know, but God in his grace probably gave me that time to grow, so I would still be a pastor today.
I think there's a very, very important lesson, just like Erica was talking about, what all of us have talked about. And that is, we're very, very much like the children of Israel today. We will stand on the borders of the promised land, and we will not go in because we doubt what our belief is. And we will die in the desert, and will not walk into the promised land when it's there before us, because we refuse to do what God has asked us to do. And I think that's very pertinent today.
Thanks for telling my conclusion.
Oh, so
I appreciate that. No, but I agree with that. I agree with that. The same God that took his time back then. He's the same God that took his time today. And he's the same God that wants us to be faithful, that wants us to trust him, that wants us to be courageous, because he's right there waiting for us. He's right there ready to help us. Our situation is not that much different from their situation back then. Geographically, yes, that's all different and all that, but the God has never changed. And does not change. And so he's ready, he's waiting, he's longing to achieve his promise, to accomplish it. It just depends on us, on our faith.